Arthur Ainsworth lived a life walled in by peeling paint and silence. Number 17 Primrose Lane was his fortress, a house as reclusive as its sole occupant. Children on their way to school spoke of him in hushed, imaginative tones, the neighborhood enigma, a shadow behind perpetually drawn curtains. So when the newspapers piled up, and an uncharacteristic stillness settled over number 17, a quiet concern rippled through the small, tightly knit community. He died as he had lived, alone. There were no tearful relatives, no grieving friends to sort through the detritus of a life. That task, by unspoken agreement and a sense of civic duty, fell to his immediate neighbors. Sarah, a pragmatic primary school teacher with a kind heart, and Tom, a retired postman who knew everyone's history, or so he thought. The air inside number 17 was thick with the scent of dust, old paper, and disuse. It was a museum of one man's solitude. As they began the somber task of clearing, sorting an existence into keep and discard piles, Sarah stumbled upon them in a worn leather satchel tucked beneath a loose floorboard in the study, a collection of journals. They weren't diaries of daily mundanities, but volumes filled with meticulously written unsent letters. Each entry began with a name, an observation, a need. To young Master Henderson, who dreams of stars but lacks the telescope, followed by an anonymous donation to the school's science club. To Mrs. Gable, whose roses wilted after the sudden passing of her husband, detailing how a rare, resilient rosebush had been anonymously planted in her garden weeks later. To the struggling bakery on Mill Street, whose oven faltered at the worst possible time, recounting a discreet cash gift slipped through their mail slot signed simply, "A well-wisher." The letters were a hidden cartography of kindnesses, a silent testament to a life lived in the service of others, entirely unseen. Arthur Ainsworth, the recluse, had been a phantom philanthropist, a quiet architect of small, significant miracles. He had observed his community from his shadowed windows, not with judgment, but with an almost painful empathy, and had acted always in secret. The letters were his confessions, his way of acknowledging the connections he otherwise eschewed. He'd meticulously detailed the help given, not out of pride, but perhaps as a way to give form to the emotions he couldn't express directly. None had ever been posted. Good heavens, Sarah. The man was a saint in hiding, and no one knew. He helped all these people, changed their lives in small, crucial ways, and never sought a word of thanks. These letters, they need to reach their destinations. It's the least we can do. His legacy isn't just this dusty house, it's in these pages. Their mission began. Armed with decades-old addresses and a growing sense of purpose, they became detectives of Arthur Ainsworth's unseen life. Their first visit was to a Mr. Henderson, now Dr. Henderson, an astrophysicist at the local university. He was a man whose eyes still sparkled with a boyish enthusiasm for the cosmos. When Sarah read the entry about the telescope, a slow smile of dawning comprehension spread across his face. That old telescope. It appeared as if by magic. My parents always said an anonymous donor from the community had provided it after I'd written a rather passionate, if grammatically challenged, letter to the school newsletter about wanting to see Saturn's rings. That single instrument, it set me on my path. To think it was Mr. Ainsworth, the quiet man from down the lane. Next was Eleanor Gable, now a sprightly octogenarian whose garden was a riot of color, dominated by a magnificent, unusually hued rosebush. Tears welled as Tom gently recounted the story of her anonymously replaced plant. Eleanor Gable, my Albert, he loved roses. When he died and my prize bush withered, It felt like losing him all over again. Then this one appeared. It was like a sign, a little piece of hope when everything felt so dark. He was such a solitary man. I barely saw him. Yet, he saw my grief. The bakery on Mill Street was still there, thriving now, run by the grandson of the original owner. Young Daniel listened, wide-eyed, as Sarah explained the timely, anonymous cash gift that had saved his grandparents from ruin during a critical equipment failure. Daniel, my grandfather, always spoke of the angel of Mill Street. He said that money arrived on the very day they were considering closing up shop for good. It wasn't just the money, it was the feeling that someone, somewhere, believed in them. This place, my family's livelihood, we owe it in part to Mr. Ainsworth's quiet generosity. One by one, over weeks that turned into months, Sarah and Tom delivered Arthur's unsent missives. They found a struggling artist who'd received an anonymous grant that funded her first exhibition, now a celebrated local painter. They met a young woman whose university tuition for her final, crucial year had been mysteriously paid, allowing her to become a doctor who now served underprivileged communities. Each letter opened a door to a past brightened by an unseen hand. Each recipient was a living testament to a legacy woven in threads of quiet compassion. The recipients were often stunned, sometimes tearful, but always profoundly grateful. They shared stories of how these anonymous acts of kindness had been pivotal, often arriving at moments of deep despair or critical need, altering the trajectory of their lives in ways they couldn't have imagined. The image of the reclusive Mr. Ainsworth was redrawn in their minds, from a figure of mystery to one of quiet, unassuming heroism. The final letter was addressed to a Miss Amelia Davenport, with a more recent date than the others. The address led Sarah and Tom to a hospice on the outskirts of town. Amelia, it turned out, had been a palliative care nurse. She had passed away a few years prior, but her colleague, a kind-faced woman named Nurse Davies, remembered her speaking of an anonymous benefactor who regularly sent books, art supplies, and small comfort items for the patients. Amelia used to say it was like having a secret guardian angel for the hospice. She never knew who it was. These little things, they meant so much to our patients in their final days. It wasn't just the items, but the thought, the care from a stranger. He understood what it means to provide comfort. With the last letter delivered, Sarah and Tom stood before number 17, no longer a house of shadows, but a monument to a life rich in hidden connections. The council had cleared it out, readying it for sale. But Arthur Ainsworth's true legacy wasn't in the bricks and mortar. It was in the thriving careers, the cherished gardens, the solvent businesses, the comforted souls, a constellation of lives unknowingly brightened by his quiet interventions. They organized a small memorial, not in a somber church, but in the local community garden he had anonymously helped fund years ago. Many of the letter recipients came, sharing their stories, their voices weaving a tapestry of gratitude. Dr. Henderson spoke of the stars. Mrs. Gable brought a bouquet of her unique roses. Daniel from the bakery supplied pastries on the house for Mr. Ainsworth's angel. Arthur Ainsworth had died alone, but he was not unmourned. He had sought no recognition in life, yet in death his legacy blossomed, tended by the very people he had so quietly, so profoundly touched. He had been a silent cartographer, mapping out pathways of kindness, and in doing so, had left behind a detailed, indelible atlas of a life well lived, its coordinates marked by the changed lives of others. His reclusiveness had been a veil, not for misanthropy, but perhaps for a humility so profound it could only express itself in the language of unseen generosity. What he left behind was not just a collection of unsent letters, but the enduring, resonant truth that the most powerful legacies are often built in silence, one act of unassuming kindness at a time.